Welcome back. Now it's time for us to go ahead and create the entity classes. Entity classes are those which help us connect to the database and they act as a bridge between our database and Java classes. So the entity classes are nothing but part of the ORM framework, which is object relational mapping. So the class that we will create here is going to be a item entity class, and this will correspond to an item table in our database. So I will say item entity, and I'm naming it as item because this can be anything. It can be a book entity, it can be a product entity, course entity. You can replace this with anything. So I'm just naming it as generic item entity. So how can we tell Spring JPA that this class needs to participate in the ORM and make it as an entity? So there are certain annotations provided by Spring Data JPA. So first one is at the rate entity. Remember this was from Java X if it was Spring Boot 2.x, but now we are using Spring Boot 3. So all the imports has been changed to jakarta.persistence and jakarta.xyz. Next annotation we will use is at the rate table, and this will help us give a name to our table, which means with this name our table will get created. So I will say items, and then we will also use data annotation, which will create getter setters and other functions for our annotation. This is coming from Lombok, that helps us reduce the boilerplate code of writing getter setters and constructors. So for constructor we have at the rate no arc constructor. So now we will go ahead and create our fields, or let's say what are the different columns that will be created in this table. So that will be represented with the fields of our class. So first column we will need is a private long data type ID column, and we want this ID column to become the primary key. So the way we do it by giving it at the rate ID annotation, and now this column will be made as a primary key column in our database and in this particular table items. Then we want the primary key column value to be auto generated. So for that we have another annotation, we say generated value, and then we have to tell with what strategy the value should be created for this auto generated ID column. So we'll say strategy generation type dot auto, which means whichever is the default sequence generation type for this particular database, use that to create the values for this particular primary key column. And in this case, we are using H2 database, so whatever is the default sequence type strategy that will be used here. If we will change the database to MySQL, automatically the strategy will be automatically added here for creating the values. Then we will have another field called private string item title. Press Ctrl D, it will duplicate the line, and then we will also have description, and then we will have couple of other fields to track the creation and updation date. So we'll say private local date time, and we'll say created at, and we'll say private local date time updated at. So if we don't use, we could use these kind of at the rate column annotation on every column and give a length. We can give some constraint like nullable false. Then we can say length should be maximum 255 or whatever length we want. This kind of things we can give here, and we can even give a name to it and say Name for this should be item underscore title. So we can do that, but if we don't give this, no problem. A column with this particular field or the name title will be created. But if we want to give it this name, it will be added here. And if we want to add constraints, we can do this. And if we don't give any length, by default it will take 255. But if we want to restrict the length, we can give this as well. So I will comment this for now, and we can do this same exercise on different other columns as well. So this is our entity class, and then now if I start our application, and here's our database. So let's go to the browser and try to access it on this particular URL because we have enabled it to be accessed via the browser. So if we go to the browser on this particular URL, our database is here, but do change this URL. So let's go to our database URL, copy this, paste it here. Default username is SA, password is none. So connection established, click on this, and we see items table got created, and this table got created with this particular name that we have added. And different fields will be created: ID, title, description, local date, time fields. So created at, updated at, title, description, ID. You see it adds an underscore at the camel casing. Created at. So here it has added underscore and made the A as small. So this is automatically done by the JPA ORM. We don't have to worry about that. So we have successfully created our table. So from here we can run SQL queries on this table if we want. We can even see that operations. So I can say select star from items and run. So nothing is present here, so we'll not get any data. So this is how you can create entity class and browse it on the database URL. Thank you.